Norman Chan.
Hey, Will.
Did you know that advertisers are why we can keep This Is Only a Test free?
Yes, I love the fact that this show is free. Hope you guys do too.
I'm a big fan of that too. But in order to get great advertisers on This Is Only a Test, we need to know more about you guys, the audience.
Yes.
So what we need you to do is go and fill out a quick 5-minute survey. We'll learn all about you. You'll learn a little bit more about us. And if you entered your email address at the end of the survey, we're not going to use it to spam you or send you marketing crap. We're just going to send it to use it to draw a name to give a $100 gift card every month.
For Amazon.
Yeah, for Amazon. So it's podsurvey.com/test. That's podsurvey.com/TEST. It takes about 5 minutes. It helps us make the show better, and we would love it if you would fill that out for us.
And it's anonymous.
And I guess that'll do it. On with the show.
Hey, let's start the show.
It's July 17th, 2015. Welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com. I'm Will Smith. We have a full house today, Norman Chan.
Woo. Sorry, no podcast last week. We were at Comic-Con. To make it up, we got Patrick Norton.
Patrick Norton's here.
Thanks.
Jeremy Williams is here.
Woo.
Thanks.
And it's the 16th of July.
It's the 17th of July.
Well, today's the 16th, and today is Thursday.
I assume the podcast is going up on Thursday.
Wow. Okay, you know what happened? This is funny.
Did your computer?
No. I installed Fantastical 2 on my Mac at a fairly extensive cost a few weeks ago. And instead of having the date on the icon change every day like the calendar app icon does,
Yeah.
this one is just always May 17th.
Is that true?
Yeah. So I'm looking at it right now.
All right.
Thank
Patrick
goodness
can
it's
see it.
only
Yeah,
one day
May
off.
17th.
You didn't say something like July 22nd.
I know. I could have. I
Or
was
July.
I just glanced down and I'm completely flying blind over here.
I was about to ask if it was a financial or an emotional cost, because some software installations are emotional costs, but this is obviously both.
It was really expensive. It was like $20 or $30.
$20 or $30.
Okay.
$30 for a calendar app.
Sorry, I paid $10 for an app recently, and I got the most amazing emails about how only fools pay for software, and what am I, an idiot?
Your audience is maybe a little more reactionary than ours.
I don't know about that.
You think?
I think
don't know.
$30 for a calendar app that becomes a recurring cost as they release new software is maybe a little much.
I think so. Here's the thing.
I would demand a dynamic icon at the very least. For
At the
30
very
bucks.
least.
I bet that's a closed API that Apple doesn't give anybody else access to. Yeah. I like Fantastical 2 a lot, but
It's beautiful.
now that I know this whole thing about the icon, and now that the app's running, the icon updates. So it was only when the app wasn't running. I closed it so that I'd have no distractions for the podcast.
That's horrible.
And now it says July 16th. So it's July 16th, 2015.
So does this qualify as a error with the product or an error with the user?
It's always human error. That's the lesson.
It was
Always
very
human
gentle,
User error.
very gentle, Patrick.
Especially
yeah.
if you call tech support. I tried, thank you.
Yeah, I can tell you some tech support stories that end with, oh, the power's out in the building. I can't turn the light on. Yeah. So it's real stories.
I can't see if the plug's in there. The lights are out. Why are the lights out? Well, the
How are you
power's
guys
out.
doing? Jeremy, you were just on a trip.
Yeah,
Vacation.
I was not as interesting as yours. I went to see family back east, but it's always good to go back to the East Coast for a little bit.
Do a little crabbing.
No, I didn't. No, I planted a mailbox.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
What state were you in?
Virginia. Yeah.
Just
I guess they have their own. Well, we won't go into the whole flag business, but in South Carolina, they're taking down flags in front of state buildings.
Yeah, good for them.
In Virginia, I guess they're taking them off license plates.
also a good idea.
Yeah.
What was your strategy on did the mailbox come down due to vandal activity?
Just age.
Okay.
10 years old. It's
Okay.
good to go home and help out your mom.
We my
Yay.
one of the last projects my dad and I did before I went to college was the mailbox fortification project of 1992. We had a bunch of hooligans driving around our neighborhood with baseball bats whacking mailboxes as they do.
Yeah, like in Stand By Me, right?
Just exactly like that.
Yeah.
So we bought a big mailbox and a small mailbox, and put the big mailbox on the outside, the small mailbox inside the big mailbox, and then filled the gap with concrete.
Wow.
There's it's a friend of my dad did something similar where it was like 60 pounds of concrete,
Yeah.
and then they basically went to all this effort to make it look like it was still a wood post,
Yeah.
and just a slightly bigger mailbox. And a few weeks later, he came out to a dent on the front of the mailbox and half a baseball bat.
Oh, that's fantastic. Those kids.
Ours had the back window of the car smashed out because the mailbox it rebounded, we assume, and then there was a bunch of safety glass on the ground.
So that makes me happy.
It was really good, yeah.
Nice.
Federal fucking with mailboxes is a federal offense, people. Don't do it.
There's so
Is
many
it?
better
Yes.
It's
ways.
mail that's inside. If it's an empty mail, if it's an empty mailbox
I think
and there's no mail inside,
Yeah.
is it just property
I
damage?
no, I think the mailbox is still something you're like licensing from the federal from the U.S. Postal Service.
Wait.
Hold
a
on.
personal mailbox?
Yeah.
Where people the mail person
Patrick's
drops your mail
fact
in?
checking.
Mailboxes are considered federal property, and a federal law, Title 18, United States Code
Wait,
Section 1705, makes it a crime to vandalize them or to injure, deface, or destroy any mail deposited in them. Violators can be fined up to $250,000 or imprisoned for up to 3 years for each act of vandalism.
But is that for personal mailboxes or for like the blue,
Blue
ones?
thing. I think that's the blue one.
I don't know, man. I have heard that it's illegal to put something in someone else's mailbox.
Yes.
Is that a
That's
federal
why
offense?
you get a big lecture when you're like a 6-year-old delivering newspapers. Like, remember, you can never put this in the mailbox.
Is that because
Really?
Yeah, because it's basically no one but the Postal Service is allowed to use your mailbox.
Wow.
Yeah.
we don't have? I never grew up with a mailbox.
Oh, yeah, here it is. Postalinspectors.uspis.gov/raddocs/tipvandal.htm. Protecting yourself from mailbox vandalism. Rural area mailboxes are vulnerable to vandalism because they are usually isolated, located on public thoroughfares, and frequently not visible to the box owners from their homes. City residential mailboxes are vandalized to a lesser degree.
See, you would
Federal
have experienced
property.
this, Norm.
Yeah.
$250,000. Usually, when your mailbox, like in an apartment building in a city, usually when your mailbox has been vandalized, it's because somebody stole the mail.
Yeah. Or they put poop in it. I had that happen once.
no.
Really?
Yeah, somebody jammed poop through the slot.
What?
That was not good.
Just yours or everyone's?
Everyone's. It was super bad.
That's awful.
That's a lot of poop.
Well, it was like a 4-unit building, so it wasn't that many. But the problem we had was that we were on the end of a really long straight stretch. So we were on the right side of the road. People had a good 600 yards to get up to speed, so they could get a real good running start at it. And if they wailed on it with an aluminum baseball bat, it was all over. The whole thing would fly about 40 feet, and there'd be mail everywhere. So the concrete thing, it still stands as far as I know. It's 20 years old now, and it's still going strong.
Sounds devious. I love it.
It was pretty good.
You guys were at Comic-Con.
Indeed.
That's right.
Patrick, were you at Comic-Con?
I was not a Comic-Con.
You've never gone to Comic-Con, have you?
I've never made it to Comic-Con. By the time I became aware of Comic-Con, it was at that point where it was like lotteries and tickets and selling blood or doing despicable acts to get tickets, and then you'd have to stay in like the Inland Empire and drive in every morning.
Yeah. You don't want to do that.
Someday maybe when the kids are ready.
Yeah, me too. That's where I'm at. I've never been either.
My recommendation is don't go to Comic-Con.
Well, you gotta go once, right?
You can go take your kids to other conventions
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
To build up to that.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to go someplace where they're going to be able to like hang out with other nerds and play board games and like do fun stuff, there are better cons than Comic-Con
Right.
for that. Because Comic-Con is not about having fun. I don't
It's
think.
absolutely about having
Oh, wait.
fun. It just takes a lot. It takes a lot of energy to have
Yeah,
that fun.
you have to work really hard to have a lot of fun at Comic-Con. Whereas if you go
Or
to
not
something like
work at all.
PAX or
Yeah, it's a little easier. I was
Yeah,
shocked.
smaller
I was
stuff.
shocked to hear how long people waited in line for the Star Wars event. That was like a sleep overnight thing for most people.
Hall H in general.
Yes,
That's amazing.
Let's talk about what we did at Comic Con.
Sure.
To give you a quick debrief, we did record a podcast there, still entitled, if you want to listen to that. But in that podcast, we didn't really talk too much about what was going on. It was still kind of in the heat of the moment. And now that we're back
and
from
Chris
Comic-Con,
Hadfield was
and
there.
Chris Hadfield
so we
was
kind
there.
of just stopped talking about Comic-Con and started talking about Chris
Space,
Hadfield.
space,
Yeah.
space.
So we of course went with Adam, and
Yes.
one of the things he does is incognito walks. He walks the floor, which is it kind of sucks because Adam used to do it just as a way so he could enjoy the convention and take pictures and go to the booths that he always likes to visit, buy some things
Without being hoarded.
But now that it's become kind of a production, it's a balance of like we want to share that experience with people. It's kind of like this treasure hunt thing for people on the floor, and he never doesn't really get a chance to
Well,
do those things.
he usually takes a mask of some kind that he can walk around in.
I don't think he had any.
I don't
time
think he
this
did
year.
it this year.
He did last year. So there's like the super secret incognito that we don't go for, and then there's like the public facing one, which every year has been bigger than the last. Last year, of course, he walked with his alien spacesuit, the one with the face hugger, which he had spent 10 years working on. And then this year, we brought in Chris Hadfield. And it was the first time I think he's done a dual incognito, and he did 2 of them. He walked with Chris Hadfield in 2001: A Space Odyssey Clavius spacesuits, the silver ones with the white helmets.
The ones that Haywood Floyd and company go to the monolith on the moon in.
Right.
It's the same design helmet spacesuit as the famous red and yellow ones. But
They're gorgeous.
But yeah, it is. He's been working on this for so long. He made the plans for the suit. Had that sewn by I think the same woman who did his Mercury suit. No. And then just did all sorts of it was a really good suit. He also made a chiller for it, which is the first time he's done that. So one of the things that people who don't wear costumes a lot don't know is that anytime you put a helmet on and you're enclosed, two things happen. Carbon dioxide starts to build up, and it starts to get really, really hot and sweaty and humid in there just from your exhalations. So when he was wearing the alien suit, which was one of the more sealed things he's worn, the normal vent just wasn't cutting it for him. He needed a chill suit. So he came up with a way to do a chill suit this year, and basically just we'll do a whole video about it. But basically, it's just a shirt with some tubing that runs through it, like low pressure tubing.
Did he actually make it from scratch?
He bought the shirt.
Okay.
Because you can get them for race car drivers.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say because I've seen people try to make them, so they didn't want to spend the money for race vehicles, and it's one of those things that looks really simple and is an utter nightmare to make yourself.
Well, so we've seen the ones that NASA uses, which is basically a whole set of long johns that are made of mesh and have tubing woven back and forth in them. Those look like they're super homemade and make it look like it would be really easy to do if you went and got like a wide mesh shirt from one of the fetish shops down in South of Market.
Right.
But yeah, he went out and bought something.
Okay.
I had the impression he had something to do with the reservoir and the pump, though.
So he built the reservoir and the pump from scratch using like an immersion pump, and he just used acrylic glue to make the reservoir the size that would fit in his backpack. I think that there's ways we can make it smaller by, instead of using quite as big a reservoir, using a thermoelectric cooler or something like that to actually chill the water directly. So then you just carry batteries instead of, you're limited by the number of batteries you can carry, not by the amount of ice you can pack in the reservoir. But yeah, he said it worked really well, and they didn't come out of those suits looking like they were going to die. So
they were still sweaty, but they at least didn't look like they were.
How long
die.
were they on the floor?
Probably a half hour on that one. It was a long time.
That one was about half an hour plus transportation. So they were in those suits for a long time.
An hour at
and,
least.
They had fans going on for some circulation. Obviously, Chris Hadfield has done many hour-long spacewalks.
More than that. I mean, spacewalks, you get in and out of the suit in an hour. Yeah,
spacewalks. And so he could tough it out, no problem. Adam's done these enough that he could tough it out. So they were both really good sports about it.
They're in pretty good shape, too. The one thing to note, if you're going to try to build this before we do the video, make sure you have a way to turn the pump on and off while you're in the suit, because you can get hypothermic really, really quickly if you leave it on full blast with ice water in there. And like that would have serious health ramifications. So make your switch accessible so you can flip stuff on and off. I shouldn't have to say that, but it's best to say.
Well, no, it's good to say, because I mean, people think of hypothermia as being like, well, I fell into the river, in January in the in North Dakota. If there's a river in North Dakota, you can break through the ice to in January. But it's amazing how fast people go hypothermic, and they don't recognize it, because not a lot of people have spent a lot of quality time in 50-degree water, or even realize how fast you can just suck the heat out of your body.
Yeah, it's that. I mean, it's the thing I told you in Boy Scouts, right?
Right.
If it's 50 degrees and you're wet, you can get hypothermia just as easily as if it's 30 degrees and you're dry. So anyway. That was that. We'll have more on that. It's not in the not too distant future, but we'll definitely do more stuff about both the suit and the chiller, because I know people have tons of questions about both of those things.
So, Tested brought cool things to Comic-Con. Did you guys see anything that excited you? Or are you guys burnt out on Comic-Con, or is it still okay?
Nope.
Because you seemed like, because I saw the walkthrough you did, and you looked pretty stoked about that.
That was in the heat of it. You'd say they're exhausting. We also have another incognito video, which is up today, and Adam actually walked another time with a special guest, which is Alton Brown. So, where the Clavius suits were highly technical and a huge effort, he, with Alton Brown, went as the Matrix twins. And
really?
And they were super, and they were still custom made. Some parts of the costume, but really low grade costumes.
Like intentionally bad.
Intentionally bad costumes with bad wigs to try to not get recognized.
But their faces are exposed here, right?
with
Mostly.
sunglasses.
That's interesting.
They have similar facial hair,
Yeah.
which is how they thought they could get away with it, but they were recognized, as you'll see in the video.
So
It was really funny.
the thing about his Adam's intentionally bad costume wasn't very bad. Like, it was better than what most people are going to whip together.
Yeah.
It's
just
still
kind of
drew crowds.
Yeah, it still drew a crowd.
That's
And,
his curse.
Like, they were on IO9 or something, and whoever posted the picture on IO9 had no idea who they were.
Oh, that's
so
funny.
it's just like the Matrix Twins, our best cosplay of Friday
That's
at
funny.
Comic-Con.
Nice.
Yeah, so that was good. Yeah, we saw a ton of good stuff. My favorite. So Comic-Con for me is always a challenge because there's these amazing costumes and a ton of creativity and people
Right.
who've built rad stuff and like just unbelievable skill being shown off.
Right.
Both on the terms of the cosplayers and the amateurs, and then you also get to see the actual real movie props in a lot of cases. So like Warner Brothers trotted out all four of the suits from the new Superman versus Batman movie, which however you feel about the movie, the costumes looked unbelievable. Weta had a booth full of like props from the Warcraft movie, Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, Chappie, their Krampus thing, a couple other things, and it was all right where you could see it, right? So normally, even if you go to like an exhibition, like we went to the Game of Thrones exhibition a couple of years ago, you can't always get up close to that stuff and see how it's actually made. And the way they display stuff at Comic-Con, usually you can get a much better look at it than you're ever going to have a chance again.
Did the World of Warcraft stuff look as realistic up close as it did on camera?
Looked way better up.
Warcraft.
amazing.
Yeah.
Not World of Warcraft.
Yeah, it's just
I'm
Warcraft.
sorry. Yeah.
It looked like Warcraft. It looked.
The
If I,
shoulder pads could have been bigger. The shoulder.
Yeah, right. Proportions
could have been a little
I think we talked to him about it. They scaled that stuff down
course.
so that it would not, so the proportions would be right in relation to normal human beings' heads. But yeah, it looked like if you said, "Hey, make me some Warcraft armor," if you had shown me that armor and said, "Hey, what's this from?" I would have said, "Oh yeah, it's Warcraft." I thought it looked really good. in
Warcraft
person.
has pretty distinctive armor, and
Yeah.
there's been decades of Warcraft cosplay already.
It looked metallic, and you said
It's all
probably
plastic,
mostly
plastic
plastic
and
and
foam.
foam.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, so that was the big surprise for me is even Weta now, except for hero props, they do almost everything in plastic and foam.
Yeah, it's all cast resin. That's
Yeah.
how you make lots of copies really
Yeah.
easily.
Um,
Smithing is tough.
So let's see. We didn't spend any time in Hall H.
So to explain, to give you clarification, Hall H is a 6,500 person room. Normally within the San Diego Convention Center, it is just another part of the big exhibit hall, but they can board it off with a wall, and they do, and they have a stage at the far end, and so they put 6,000 seats in there, and that is the big panel room where all the movies or all the big names, movies, TV shows have their panels. Now to get in that, they don't vacate the room between panels.
Oh, really?
So if you're in the morning, you can sit through and it's how it's been done for at least as long as I've been going for 11 years. You can just sit through to the very end.
And-
For example, I went one year where Jack Black was there to promote Tenacious D Pick of Destiny, and people waited outside overnight. He was the last panel of the day. Waited all day and sat through tons of panels that they didn't care about just to get a Jack Black
Right.
concert, Tenacious D concert at the very end. The Star Wars, which was the second to last panel of that day, of Friday, every day in Hall H, because they don't get people out, some people, their entire convention, Comic-Con, is just waiting in line and going to Hall H and sitting there.
Yeah.
And the bathrooms in Hall H are the worst.
I was gonna say, like, do they bring
They are the
Gatorade
worst.
bottles
No.
to pee in, or
Get
do
the
they?
expensive food, get nachos or hot dogs at the vendor outside, and then they have one exhibit hall bathroom, which I believe has like half a dozen stalls on the men's side for 6,000 people.
So
And
what
no
do you-
ins and outs.
So basically, like, you put your name on your chair, you leave your hat there, and
You-
And you have to have friends.
You
or
have
make
to have friends to
Okay.
guard. Yeah.
That, Hall H is where there was a famous pen stabbing a couple years ago. Over
Sounds like a
something.
horrible place.
I don't do that anymore. Also, they've now set up a whole tenting queue line. Like I believe when Will and I and his wife went for Iron Man 2, there was a huge
Yeah.
line, but there was no tenting system
Oh, I got
over
the worst
line.
sunburn.
Now, because of sunburn, because of how hot San Diego is, they set up basically like a first aid rescue relief tent system outside.
This started to sound
for
like
people
Burning Man.
to wait through. It's like the
Look,
worst line.
If you
ever.
like, okay, I'm gonna make a potentially really bad comparison here. But I think like it is not entirely different from like triage centers after big disasters. There's people all sitting there. They're bringing water in constantly.
Right.
There's people passing out left and right.
I would say it's probably
everybody
like-
smells like pee.
It probably like the triage center at a major at Coachella. Maybe
That's
with,
probably
with-
or maybe Burning Man. Yeah.
Man, not Burning Man. 'Cause I have some friends who worked as rangers, and one of them worked closely with a bunch of EMTs. And one night on the burn, they brought 3 people back from being flatlined. So that's probably a little more intense.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a big night.
Fewer drugs at Comic-Con probably. If you're in there all day, can you stay the night in Hall H?
You cannot stay the night. You do
So you have to
leave
go
at
get
night.
back in line again?
Yes.
What a nightmare.
Yeah, I saw that.
So the point of the Star Wars thing was obviously Star Wars was probably the marquee movie at Comic-Con this year. Marvel, while
Warner
they
Brothers
had
tried.
Warner Brothers
Hard
has
to
had a
compete
panel.
with
Yeah.
Star
Tough
Wars.
to compete with movies that you've been waiting a decade for.
Especially when, as a longtime Star Wars enthusiast, I'm not looking at this one and going like you know what I mean, like Jar Jar pretty much just Jar Jar and the acting and the script and George Lucas pretty much wiped out most of my love for the franchise until the last 15 minutes of the last movie, and then I saw the trailer for this, and they had me before I saw Han Solo,
Yeah.
and then I saw Han Solo, and I'm just like WTF question mark exclamation point question mark. So people who did not lose the faith during the long ugly opening trilogy must have been berserk online. I mean, were they just sitting there vibrating in line?
Vibrating
sure,
with the
yeah.
Force. And there was a build-up from Star Wars Celebration where some footage was shown. So the feeling was real good. The thing that you alluded to was they, at their Star Wars panel, after showing this great behind-the-scenes clip, which anyone can find online, it's a 3-minute montage of the production, J.J. Abrams then gave everyone lanyards and walked 6,000 people to a concert.
Escorted by stormtroopers.
Escorted by 501st Stormtroopers.
The man has style.
Oh my! Logistically, what an incredible nightmare.
Where the San Diego Philharmonic was that?
Yes.
Philharmonic
They
played.
played John Williams' favorite Star Wars songs.
So Gary was there.
He said he called it. He was quoted, I think, on some movie blog. As
He
Gary
wrote a
Whitta
post about it.
saying it was his Woodstock.
Right. Yeah.
With
It was
less
on Film
mud.
School Rejects.
Everyone was given. It was 6,000 people. Everyone was given a lightsaber.
You got to choose your color, is my
Hey,
understanding.
one of those Disneyland style lightsabers.
Hey,
Yeah, no,
6,000,
it's-
dude.
Yeah.
blue, red, or green.
I think Walt can
What?
spare.
What a party!
Yeah.
That's serious.
And then they played Star Wars music in a field with everybody waving their lightsabers over their head
Yeah.
for a couple hours.
We had a party too.
We had a party. It was the same time.
Ouch.
So it was fine because our party was packed and also, yeah, we maxed out.
Yeah.
1,200 people came to our party.
Your party looked like a set
So
from Star Wars.
we're one
You were
fifth the
okay.
cool of Star Wars.
Right.
Or as cool as Star
One
Wars.
fifth
true.
the volume, possibly just
Yeah.
as cool.
I'll take that. I mean, if we're going up against a $4 billion franchise, I'll take 1/5 as cool. Guarantee we spent less money.
So our party was also on Friday night. It was at one last thing with Star Wars, and we did mention this on Still Entitled. Star Wars was the second to last panel of that night, and the last panel was an evening with Kevin Smith.
Poor guy.
Sorry, Kevin Smith.
So if you wanted to get into Hall H, that was the best time.
If you wanted to see Kevin Smith, you were in luck.
Yeah, and it's great because it was like this is the only time that they actually emptied Hall H before
Yeah.
programming was over. So it sucks waiting in that line because basically if you're in those tents, you're waiting one at a time, hoping that people get hungry or have to go to the bathroom and have to leave, and then the next 10 people get to go in. But if you know the next panel is Star Wars,
Wait, is that between the panels?
Yeah,
no,
or
people-
just any time.
anytime. So like
oh my god, that's
there
horrible.
are people counting. If one person leaves, like 5 people leave, then 5 people get to go
One
in.
man enters, one man
So
goes.
how it worked when we were waiting in line for the Iron Man 2 thing was like, oh, we know Iron Man 2 is 3 panels away. Okay, let's look at the schedule for the next 3 panels. Are there going to be... Oh, Twilight's coming up. Okay, we know the teen girls are going to leave after Twilight, so maybe 1,000 people
Right.
get to go in. And then, like, an hour before Iron Man, even if people have to go to the bathroom, they'll stay because they'll
Right.
they'll wait
Just
for Iron
pee
Man.
your pants if
And-
you want to see Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, you'll know there's no chance. And so for those people waiting outside Hall H in those tents at the end of Star Wars, it was nice for them to at least get some kind of show.
And they let those people go back to their place in the line for the next day's panels, is my understanding. Like the 75 people that went in for Kevin Smith were able to go back to the start of the line if that's where they were.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, so it worked
nice.
Kevin Smith and a do-over.
Poor Kevin Smith. There was a picture somebody showed from Instagram that was like him sitting in front in this enormous empty hall,
Right.
with like 80 people in the front. It would have been it's an awesome time to go there and be a Kevin Smith fan, right?
Totally.
Yeah. So,
I think Kevin can handle that.
but he's been burned by Star Wars once again.
So we did have a party, and Jeremy, as you alluded to, there was some kind of Star Wars theme to it.
Oh, I actually did guess that. I didn't know that.
We made it look like the carbonite freezing chamber.
So I was right about
gas
that?
chamber.
I thought I was being all clever. How about that?
Well, Star Wars wasn't the official theme.
Yeah.
It was being Adam's favorite movies and our favorite movies. So
Cool.
we did bring props from, last year's party was called Incognito, and it was bring Adam's just his costumes. This year we brought a mix of his costumes and some of the props from the caves, some of the shelves from the caves from past tested
Like
videos.
Born Bag, Tarantino shelf, stuff like that.
Maltese Falcon, stuff like that. And then when we went to scout the venue, it's a massive, like 900-person club, San Diego club, as my brother likes to call. Wow, you got the second best dance club in San Diego.
It's kind of a nice burn.
I was going to say, in that case, probably a compliment.
Yeah,
I don't know anything
I
about
think
your
it was a
brother,
compliment.
but from
Yeah.
that line,
Yeah.
I think I know your brother intimately now.
Yes, exactly. That's
You know
all
a lot
need to
about
know. He knows the rankings, and he was impressed. The dance floor is a circular dance floor, and the ceiling has these LED lights that are arranged in a like a line pattern that kind of face toward the center.
Yeah.
They're not the LED lights aren't circular.
It's a sunburst.
It's a sunburst of LED lights that kind of go along the ring, and the RGBs can be any color. And when we went to scout the venue, we were like, "Oh wow!" Huh.
Norm and I both at the same moment were like, "Hey, I know what we can do here."
There's an opportunity here, and if you look at any photo of the Bespin gas chamber, the carbon freezing chamber, there is the floor paneling are orange LED lights or lights that point toward the center. It's a circular room, and
Oh,
so
wow.
it kind of has this inverse, actually, but has the gestalt of, and so that's a photo of our party. And then so put in piping on the top, hung up Han and carbonite, put
As
up
one does.
displays.
You brought Adams?
We brought
From
Adam's
the
Han and
wall?
carbonite,
Yeah.
60 pounds, able to mount that on the ceiling.
Able to mount that. I did some real MacGyver shit to hang that.
Will
fucker from the
and
ceiling.
Frank
right?
did some
Yeah.
heavy knot tying
I want
and lifting.
I want to know that you guys drove down in a van with Han and Carbonite in the back.
And R2.
And R2D2.
And I
R2D2.
drove down, like last year, in a Penske, packed with
Stuff.
lots of Adam's really nice stuff.
I'm just thinking of that moment in the Central Valley on I-5 where you get pulled over and like, what you got in the back? Movie memorabilia.
Every
Going to Comic-Con, are you?
every pothole carefully avoided.
Yeah.
No.
Oh my goodness.
Trying to pack a astromech droid is a lot harder than you might think. Like get him lashed onto the wall, it just doesn't work very well.
But it was fun. I think the fans who got in early were really happy to get some FaceTime with Adam. He chatted with people for about 90 minutes. And then at the end of the night, Deadmau5, the DJ, came on, and everyone went crazy.
He played a lot of umph music.
Yeah.
So your party had Dead Mouse.
Had Deadmau5.
Yeah.
I think you guys did okay.
I think
It was. We felt okay about it.
You should.
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't have 6,000 people or lightsabers, but I think you showed yourselves well.
And we had Han Solo frozen in carbonite hanging from the ceiling above the
I
dance
was
floor.
so afraid. I mean, I know I
Oh my God, dude.
I trusted the
You
tie
think you were
jobs,
afraid?
but like it was just hanging at an angle. I mean, it wasn't the point where people could hit it,
It
or
was an
swing
intentional angle.
but
We wanted 30 degrees so that we could light him well. Yeah, let me tell you, every time I looked out over the dance floor, all I could think was, has it moved? Is it moving? Has it dropped a little bit? Because you'd look out and there'd be 30 people standing underneath this thing. I was like, I could really, like, one mistake here could kill 15 or 20 people. No problem.
so Patrick,
Every one of those guys would be happy to go that way.
You think so?
Yeah, everyone.
I bet their lawyers would disagree.
you asked earlier, can we still enjoy Comic-Con?
No, the answer is no.
Here's when I enjoyed Comic-Con. I enjoyed Comic-Con on Tuesday at 11 a.m. when I returned the empty Penske with no damage.
Yeah.
And after all of Adam's stuff had been returned to his cave.
Yes.
That's when I began to enjoy Comic-Con.
Sounds a lot like CES.
It's very similar to like big presence at CES. Anytime you have to move a big operation,
Right.
It's just there's so much stress on both sides of that you kind of don't like. I had about 5 minutes at the start of the party where I was like, this is a pretty fucking good party. And then I was like, well, in 5 hours, we're going to have to pack all this shit back up into the truck.
Till 4:30 a.m.
I'm going to go jam an earplug way into
we're
my
up till
ear.
4:30 a.m.
Yeah.
packing
Wow.
up for the party. After the party, and I'm not eating much food, and we just went to Subway.
Jeez.
Yeah.
You did a podcast the next day.
And we did a podcast
Yeah.
next morning.
11 o'clock. Last year, we did the podcast the next morning at 7 o'clock. That was a mistake. So anyway, that's
and then
Comic-Con.
We also brought a Rancor.
Oh, right. I forgot about Frank's Rancor.
So that was a big project.
Bill's
that we did.
District 9 gun and Frank's alien claw for that.
Yep.
I don't think those videos are up yet, but you guys will see them soon.
Yep. Frank's Rancor was awesome.
Frank's Rancor is beyond awesome.
He built that in less than a month. I don't know if you saw pictures of that, Patrick. It's a costume of the Rancor. From Return of the Jedi, and his inspiration for building that is in the production for Return of the Jedi. Lucas had commissioned the Rancor was supposed to be a suit, a man in a suit, Godzilla style, and they had prototyped it. And there are photos that we got access to from the archives and from Phil Tippett's studio of their prototype of how the man would walk in the Rancor suit. But the final Rancor that they made just didn't match up to the maquette that Phil Tippett had made.
Sure.
And so they made it a puppet. So what you see in the movie is a combination of a bigger head for some of those close-up shots and a puppeted one. Not a lot, a few stop-motion shots, but really just puppeted, and then composited with the Luke shots. But Frank, our friend and a fan of Creatures and a fan of the Phil Tippett's work, wanted to make the Rancor suit as it would have been made, but his style, make it true to the maquette. And I think it was pretty successful.
He did a really nice job.
It's beautiful. Yeah. There's no eye holes in it, which was interesting. So there's a camera on the front that's embedded in the
nostril.
Yeah, so we were talking about this. Like, we're going to look through it because the head actually protrudes much further than your normal head. That your head is, there's a frame that you can actually, original design was going to be able to turn the head. So we got a FPV camera from a racing quadcopter because they're low latency. Actually, we just wired up, and he wore one of those FPV racing goggles.
Oh my goodness!
With a wide field of view.
That's so committed because like those work, but it's not what you would call a particularly.
Well, we got one with switched out the lens, so it was a wide field of view, and we adjusted the exposure settings so that indoor and outdoor to be fast exposure changes, and the super low latency.
And it's only going like 10 feet, not like a quarter mile.
Well, we walked a block and a half. Probably.
No, he's in it. He's wearing the goggles.
No, that's what I mean. Like instead of like when you
he was
put
just
him on,
wired directly.
The
It wasn't a wireless.
wired directly. We tested wireless, and we decided wired was just the easy way to go.
Right.
But we had a scare right before the walk where he couldn't see anything through the goggles. He was just getting static. And so some quick troubleshooting, and then whack.
Well, but the larger issue with that, and I did some math yesterday. I think he might have been getting carbon dioxide poisoning inside that suit for the amount of time that he was in there.
There was an air hole.
The air hole was that big and it was under his crotch. It wasn't far enough away. There was nothing forcing air through it. Like he was in there for about 15 or 20 minutes and he was panting really hard by the end.
There's
It's just
audio
one
that
of
we
those
have
signs.
that we didn't put out because we had recorded his direct audio, and he was exhausted.
Yeah,
it looks like a huge
It's a hard
costume.
job. It's not super heavy, but it is very unwieldy and it's hard to move in.
Right.
And it was 95 degrees outside probably that day in San Diego in the sun. So like it was hot.
I gotta say, this is more references to potential death by any means, much less the fact that they're both around carbon dioxide than I've ever heard on a tested podcast.
Well, in space, it's not about the lack of oxygen; it's about the over carbon dioxide.
Yeah, that's what we've learned.
At least until there's a hull
Dizzy.
rupture.
Yeah, exactly. Well, right. The hull rupture takes care of the carbon dioxide problem. It has its own unique set of challenges. Should we talk about Pluto, speaking of space?
I just want to know, first of all, what it was like meeting Hatfield. I mean, on the podcast. Was that
He's the
fun?
best. He's the nicest guy in the world.
The most incredible man in the world.
I'm number one in the Hadfield Appreciation Society.
Yeah.
Norm and Joey are number 2 and number 3 respectively. He has the firmest handshake.
I imagine so.
Yeah.
He's a commander.
He rememers everything.
All your name
Is that right?
Yeah,
Everyone's
everybody's
name.
names. He met 15 people in a row. He remembered all their names. While we were waiting for, is the panel up yet?
Yeah.
Okay. We had an opportunity to sit for a fairly extended period of time while we were waiting on something to happen and just kind of chat. And he was answering, like we talked about flying jets because before he was an astronaut, he was a test pilot. And he's checked out on dozens of planes, I assume, tons of planes. We were talking about flying different things. He was answering the kind of questions he usually gets as an astronaut about flying like supersonic jet fighters and stuff like that. He was totally game for whatever. He was really nice.
One of the best things was the morning after his incognito walk with Adam, when we returned back to the room. He was hanging around, and Phil Plait, the bad astronomer who writes for Slate, was there. He was a super nice guy, incredibly intelligent. He's like Neil deGrasse Tyson level astronomer. And he and Chris Hadfield were just shooting the shit about Pluto.
Yeah.
About New Horizons, because it was before it happened. And
Well, it was the day that the flyby was going to happen, right?
to hear that, just to be a fly in that room and to hear those guys talk about their perspectives on Pluto as something was happening while they were at Comic-Con was incredible.
Yeah, it was really cool. So Pluto happened.
Yeah.
New Horizons did a flyby. There were some problems a couple weeks ago that we talked about a little bit on the podcast. But it seems like they worked most of that stuff out without a whole lot of loss to the science. But yeah, New Horizons earlier this week just blew right by Pluto at a fairly astounding rate of speed.
It's our fastest craft ever to leave the atmosphere.
Well, it's the first one with an ion drive, right? Or the first thing that really
didn't
has
know
an
that.
ion drive. Yeah, so it's tiny, constant small acceleration versus one big blast, which is what we normally do.
But it can't slow down now because it's used up almost all the fuel.
Yeah, it's not gonna stop.
Yeah.
Can't stop till it's got enough. It doesn't have enough yet.
Sorry.
But yeah, so it's eventually will overtake the Voyager probes and all that stuff too, right?
I read it won't.
Oh, it won't.
I don't know, but I don't know why not. If it's the fastest, you would think it would. But I read that it wouldn't because Voyager's just so far away. I don't know.
The Voyager and all
Eventually
the-
it will.
I would think so.
Yeah.
I don't know.
If you can explain this to us, please do in the
I'll have
comments
to find the
below.
article I read, but so it flew by. It was within 10,000 miles of Pluto,
Something like that.
and it snapped some beautiful photos.
So the terrifying thing about this whole process that I didn't realize is that, well, first off, you can go to the Deep Space Network webpage and see what probes are communicating with which antennas around the world at any given time. It's a great webpage. Everybody should go check it out because it's really cool. It gives you like the actual data rates. What do you think the data rate is for a connection to Pluto
It's
right
1
now?
kilobit.
1 kilobit per second.
I thought it was 300 baud.
At
somebody
most-
was-
Up to 1 kilobit at most.
Okay.
So I'm-
4 kilobit, but
I'm
currently at 1
thinking,
kilobit.
yeah, I know that's slow by today's standards, but as somebody who had a 300 baud modem, I'm
Right.
thinking this is pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Well, it was- with latency of
8, 9 hours. With 9 hours round
Well,
trip.
yeah, your multiplayer Quake's not going to work, but
No, your thing's going to be a nightmare.
muds.
You could almost, I was going to say, you could almost play Oregon Trail.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
really-
slow game.
It's all Civ 5, man. You just send your changes back and forth. It's all good.
Well,
but on your 300 baud modem, you weren't sending massive multi-megapixel images either.
well, I mean, it's downloading, large images or large games, and it would take an hour to download, whatever. So, I mean, it was slow.
Well,
But
so-
this is closer to like 9600 baud, which back in the day I would have died for 9600 baud.
So the other thing they're doing is I assume because of power requirements, but I don't know, they can kind of only do one thing at a time with the probe. So when they were doing the flyby, it was collect as much science as we can, and then several hours after that time passed, that opportunity passed, like they didn't know if the flyby had succeeded until not just the time lag after, but like 10 hours. It ended up being the flyby was in the morning, and the confirmation ping came in at 5:30 Pacific that night.
Is that when people cheered?
That's when people cheered. That's
Okay.
when they were like, everything went okay. We got data, and now it's a matter of like taking the next 9 months to send it back at 1 kilobyte per second, or 1 kilobyte per second.
Goodness.
Yeah, can you imagine?
Kilobit.
Kilobit. Yeah, sorry.
It was fun explaining this to my son because we had this moment because Jupiter and Venus were just hanging on the horizon this week.
Yeah.
And I got out. We were talking about on Tech Thing this week a couple of my favorite astronomy apps on the phone so we could see what they were. And then
Clear
he starts
skies?
waving. No, actually. Oh my goodness. One I've been using on and off for like 15 years. Which means at this point I really should remember the name of it, but I just sort of click on it.
It's the one with the phone, one with the stars.
Sky Guide, and then what's the other one?
Sky Guide is great.
Sky Guide's great. Sky Guide's gorgeous.
It has a red mode too.
And Distant Suns,
Ah,
which Distant Suns started out on the Amiga. Like they started development on that in 1985.
This conversation's over. We're
Sorry.
done. No Amiga talk.
I'm not going to talk about Amiga, although somebody.
Although
I'm not even an Amiga fan. It's just like
Sure you're
every
not,
8.
Patrick.
I never touched an Amiga. I never used an Amiga.
All I know is that I saw the ads in the computer magazines for the Amiga that said you could use your Amiga and a modem to see when you could look at satellites flying over. And I was like, that is literally the best thing I've ever heard as like a 9-year-old. But I didn't know anybody who had an Amiga, so we could never do it.
Well, Video Toaster. That was when actually the first time I got to see an Amiga. Right. But the like physically in the real world, not in a computer ad.
This thing's grandfather?
Oh my goodness, yes. Let's not go down the new tech rabbit hole. But it was funny because we start talking about Pluto, explaining to a 7-year-old that this spaceship is 3 billion miles away. It left the Earth a year before was born. It's been traveling at an unimaginable speed, and he's like got the big whoa face on. And then, by the way, if it hits a particle of dust, it's going to explode.
Yeah. Even like a couple of hydrogen atoms could cause some problems.
Yeah, because we'd been talking about, because we homeschool, we've been talking about the whole like force and inertia a couple weeks ago, and I was like, force equals mass times acceleration, and you can have this little tiniest thing, and it's moving so fast, and that point was about the point where he watched his brain start to freeze up. He's like, when do we see the pictures? I'm like, well, it's going to take him like 9 hours to download. And then the explaining bandwidth was hysterical, because he's never known anything other than high-speed broadband.
There's got to be bandwidth simulators. Go to a website.
Just get the shit proxy?
Yeah, just what Dad used to have.
Well, I did find a broadband calculator because I was working out some math on a video stream a few weeks ago, and I laughed because it obviously had been created around 2000 and had never been updated since. So it had some preposterously slow rates, and you couldn't actually get it up to a proper broadband rate to calculate the values
because it didn't exist.
Yeah. The idea of something being that fast was just preposterous back then.
Have you guys seen that website, lightyear.fm?
No.
It recreates the opening sequence to Contact.
Mm-hmm. Really?
But I'm not sure what they programmed it in, but with way more content, and so you can slowly just fall back over time outside, not just beyond our solar system, but light years, like 100 light years away, and get all the whatever was top of the Billboard charts.
So is it like
that is so cool.
Oh right, I forgot that intro.
So
that's cool.
The beginning of Contact has that amazing CG sequence where you start at Earth and you pan out all the way, and then you get the radio broadcast.
Right.
Yeah.
Of what would be at those distances.
What would be at those distances. I think they were approximately right, but they were like mixed between radio, music and talk radio and stuff like that.
And then you end with Hitler.
And, well, that was halfway through the movie.
Okay.
And this does that, but with all whatever the top songs were of those years. And obviously, it ramps up pretty quick.
So have they discovered anything about Pluto?
Tons of stuff.
That we didn't know?
Just looking at
any
pictures.
surprises?
We didn't. The lesson is we basically didn't know anything about Pluto.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that they've learned is that it is active geologically. The surface features, they didn't see very many impact craters or very few impact craters at all, which implies that something is changing the surface of the planet constantly, so that any impact
internally
something's happening. Whether it's geological or there's ice volcanoes or whatever, we don't know. But it's
wow.
Like it doesn't have craters, which implies that things are constantly changing, or at least have been for the last 100 million years or so.
Yeah.
Charon, I don't know how you say it. There's a lot of debate right now about the appropriate way to pronounce that. Is the large moon of Pluto, and they've found out some amazing stuff about it so far. Like, we've gone from having pictures that were basically 4 pixels of that to having high resolution imagery of something that we've never seen before.
Cool.
There's 4 to 6 mile deep chasms on Charon, which what do you do with that? I don't even know where you go. Almost certainly water, they think, on Pluto itself.
On the surface,
frozen. Frozen so cold that it will be harder than steel, but ice nonetheless. There's a bunch of features that they still kind of don't know what. Like, I don't think they've modeled out what they're for. As one of the principals said, like, the flyby is literally the beginning of our mission, right? We got there, we've collected this data. I'm going to spend the rest of my life analyzing this and figuring it out.
Aren't they going to be transmitting images back from the probe for months now?
Yeah,
literally years. I think
16 to 2 years or something like that.
They filled the data banks with photos that now have to be transmitted at 1 kilobit.
Yeah. The funny thing to me about this is that my daughter is now the same age that I was when Voyager 1 reached Jupiter. She's like 6 months younger. But I remember, like, it is an early memory watching the nightly news and seeing pictures of the Great Red Spot and Jupiter's tiny little ring and the Jovian moons up close for the first time.
These are the pictures that are going to change the astronomy books.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, right.
the college astronomy classes. Astronomy 101 is going to get new books with these photos in there.
Everything we know has changed about Pluto in the last week.
I mean, you laugh, but there was somebody had the side by side. This is formerly the best picture of Pluto we ever had, and it's like an 8-bit graphic.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
this is the shots we had yesterday.
It would fit on that, the game frame. It would,
Yes,
Yeah.
it would actually be accurately rendered on the game
Right.
frame, and it's such a. Like I was laughing. Like, most people I know can't plan a vacation. This was 8 years of flight, not counting all of the. And I wasn't even thinking about this when I was talking
Are
about
we
it.
there yet?
Yeah.
Are we there yet?
Well, and how many years did it take them to build the satellite?
I'm sure this is a 20-year project.
You know what I mean? And it's so like it's just the kind of awesome science that I would like to see more of.
The guy who discovered Pluto, his ashes are on the satellite.
That's pretty
On
awesome.
the probe.
On the
It's not
probe.
a
Sorry, that's what I meant.
Yeah. It's the last time we'll see new images up close of a planet for the first time.
Dwarf planet.
It's still planet. Ever in our we're out of planets now. We've
That's right.
seen all of them
In our galaxy.
in our solar system.
Solar
Yeah.
system, pardon me.
Yeah, I don't know. It's fascinating. I can't get enough of Pluto right now.
It's really cool.
Should we talk about Intel? Intel had news. So they basically announced that they moved to 10 nanometer. So for the last 2 generations of CPUs,
Right.
they've been on a 14 nanometer process, which means that's basically the size of the thing that they use to etch the silicon on the CPUs. Typically, they do 2 generations and they move to a smaller process size, which it affords increases in power usage, efficiency, heat generation, all that kind of stuff. Which means that then they can pack more stuff onto the chips, which means they get faster and better and more powerful and all, yada yada. They just announced as part of, I guess, their quarterly report that they're not going to make the transition to 10 nanometer with the next generation. They're going to do one more generation at 14 nanometer, and 10 nanometer will be pushed into 2016 or 2017. I can't remember.
2017. I think.
2017.
Yeah. Second half of 2017.
Sorry, more.
Yeah, so that means, we knew it was coming. Moore's Law is slowing down. It also means that the TikTok, the tick and the Tock, one was the
Right.
initial run on the new process, one is the revision, yada yada. That's gone.
I'm torn on this one because on one hand there's part of me that's like, this is what happens when you don't have meaningful competition, and soon they're going to start raising the prices and it's all going to suck. And then there's another part of me that's like, the vast majority of people I know cannot take advantage of a Core i5 processor.
A mid-range quad
Yeah.
core, is nobody's going to use 100% of.
Yeah, I mean, so if you're video editing, if you're doing sort of 3D rendering, if you are an architect, there's all this stuff at the far end of the bell curve, on the high end, far end of the bell curve. But for the, it doesn't it doesn't make sense for them to push really, 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 really hard to move
But it's
to
all
the new
about small
process.
Except
power
mobile.
efficient.
Yeah.
It's all about smaller in part. It's not performance.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because by doing a die shrink, by moving to a new process, you do reduce the power consumption, you do improve the performance. But it's funny because last week one of the big stories that came out was that IBM and a consortium had put together the first 7 nanometer process chip. And what was interesting about that is we got deeper and deeper into the story. They had, this was essentially a boutique. This was the equivalent of the hipster recreating 16th century leather crafting technology to make you a belt, because basically a bunch of guys in a lab in a SUNY university built this wafer from the ground up, and it was an incredible feat of engineering. What they were saying, like the transistors were so fragile, the simple act of connecting it to most power supplies would cause them all to basically vibrate and fall.
Yeah.
So they're talking about being a couple years out on that process, much like this. But like, part of me is really sad about this because we've been watching these ridiculous jumps, especially in battery performance on mobile.
Well, tons of what we take for granted now. Like, if you think back to what your house was like in 1985,
Sure.
no microprocessors, most likely. Maybe like a game console, like an Atari 2600 or an NES or something. Probably not even an NES at that point.
Did we have the compact portable too, or was it an IBM XT back then?
Probably I had an IBM XT back then. or a 1099-4A probably.
I did not. My dad's business
Right.
had one, and
Right.
I would sneak in at night.
He had a computer that he brought home
Right.
from work that was like the bookkeeping computer. So, like, if you think about all of the advances we have from them, all the way up to the smartphones and VR and quadcopters and all that, it's all been driven by decreased power consumption, increased performance over 20 years, 30 years.
More
So
than
yeah,
that.
right, but I mean, the last 20 years have been the fat part of the curve,
Sure.
right, where it goes from flat and slow to straight up.
The
And now
ridiculous
we're-
hockey stick.
And now we're turning into a sigmoid where it kind of takes the right turn at the top again, at least until somebody figures out quantum computing or some sub 7 nanometer process.
Photons.
So yeah, like I'm with you. Like there's not the media application is instead of my laptop lasting 8 hours, it'll last 12. That's great. I'm good. 8 hours is fine for me.
Right.
Most people don't use the power that's in that their computers are capable of right now, but there's millions of applications nobody's even thought of yet for more processing and cheaper processing and more compute. And I think a lot of that is going to be, in fact, on the server side, because the next revolution, cloud storage is free at this point. Essentially, it's not from a consumer standpoint, but for Google or Facebook or Amazon
Right.
or Apple, it costs them practically nothing. Compute still has a tangible cost, but it seems like that's trending towards zero as well. And once our web services and stuff have the ability to do the type of compute that typically you do on a desktop, all bets are off. In both a good and a bad way.
Yeah, I mean, there's part of me. It's like I have concerns about sort of the power grid and the internet infrastructure and a bunch of other stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Holding up under that, but the power. I mean, it's really interesting when you realize that data centers are pretty much located now based on whether or not you can get a gigantic source of power nearby.
Cooling and power. Yeah.
And reducing the cooling is the biggest thing for the data centers to allow them to pack more processors in, to allow them to make more computing power more economically. But, I keep watching all of these like online gaming services crash and burn because of the fundamental issues of latency.
Well, it's because they're not good. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean-
I think that's a bad use for massive compute
Sure.
on the internet.
Okay.
Right.
What about
a good-
Google Docs?
Google Docs is practically no compute though. That all runs
True.
on the client side.
Yet it's still, still sometimes it feels sort of slow and awkward. Although I may be having Windows 10 issues this week.
I think the better example is like photo management, right?
Right.
Like if I can upload my photos to Amazon and they can recognize all the faces in the photos for me, and I just put names with faces, it makes it much easier. Like that's something I'm never going to do on my desktop because I have 30 gigs of
So I
photos.
just want to finish that sentence. Like, it makes it much easier for the NSA to track you for the rest of your life.
They're already tracking me. There's nothing we can do to stop that at this point, short of pitchforks and torches going to Fort Meade. I don't endorse that idea either. But yeah, I think I think we're going to see stuff that the voice recognition stuff that's just starting to come out is the barest tip of what people can do with compute that's useful, and whether it's intrusive and useful or just useful is to be determined.
I think it's intrusive for everybody else in the bus, or in the room,
Yeah.
or at the restaurant, or in the office.
Do you have an Echo?
No, Echoes. I was fascinated because we were, Shannon brought one on Tech Thing and she'd bought, and it worked, which is still like, because I've spent so many years you were using voice recognition stuff that sucked. It's still this absolutely charming and delightful experience when it actually works. And Echo answered everything I wanted to do and was turning things on and off, and it's cool and it's awesome. And just the idea of, some little device sitting in a corner of my house listening to everything just creeps me out.
Oh, I love it. I've been waiting,
not the privacy part.
been
but
waiting
it's-
for the Star Trek computer my whole life.
Yes.
There it is.
Is that
And
cube?
now it's just like it's that episode of Voyager where the main
Yes.
Star Trek computer is limited.
Nice.
That's the brain.
Yeah.
I like to think if that's not the brain for Echo, put
I
Echo
was gonna
behind
say,
it.
we need to get a shot of this because people who are watching the video are probably wondering if I'm stoned, because about every I'll just sit there and I'll stare at the LED cube for like 40 seconds straight.
Do you ever want to share what that is?
We'll talk about it in what we've been testing.
Okay.
Can I just clarify a point? You guys were making some interesting points, and don't you think though that your original point about there are more software advances that can be made with the current technology? Don't you think that applies to cloud as well? That we don't necessarily need that to expand?
I think most of the stuff that people
power?
So if you look at the way most people run server stuff now, the idea is to run it with as little load on the machine as possible. So like your typical web server, caching server, whatever, is like you run it at 2% all the time. And I don't have any idea why that is. I just know that when the load on the servers gets too high, then they just spin up more instances. The thing that's changed is the ability to do virtual machines, to run virtual machines. And so that means that instead of building one giant machine that takes all the load of a site, like in the old days, if you were the sysadmin for Slashdot, you would buy the motherboard that had the most CPU sockets and put the most CPUs that you could in that thing with as much memory as it held and a giant ass RAM drive and a huge SCSI drive array so it had the fastest I/O. Now you don't do that. Now you just build 50 virtual machines that all do a little tiny chunk of that work and run them through as few bottlenecks as you can. And we're just starting to kind of understand what you can do beyond replicate. Like now we're good at replicating the standalone monolithic machines, right? And the clusters of monolithic machines. Now we're figuring out, oh wait, if we have access to basically infinite compute, we can do all these other things that people have never even considered, like voice recognition and pattern recognition on images. We'll talk about the Google Deep Image Nightmare Fuel pictures in a little bit. But like that's another example of what you can do with compute. When you can look at all the pictures on the internet and tell what they are instead of just what people say they are, it's incredibly powerful.
I totally get that, and I'm just suggesting that the slowing down of Moore's law isn't necessarily a threat to that. That better programming can compensate for that.
Probably not, or just throwing more hardware at it, right? Like it's at the scales we're talking about. Adding 3 CPUs doesn't matter. It's adding 3,000 CPUs makes a difference to those clouds. The point is, like Gmail exists. Gmail came out in 2003, right? Is that when they launched? 2002, 2003.
That sounds about right.
Mm-hmm. At that product exists because the higher ups at Google said, look, build products as if storage is going to be free.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be free.
Mm-hmm. That was the whole long tail argument.
Pretty much, yeah. So the same thing is happening now with compute, and it's going to completely change the internet in the same way, I think, that adding infinite storage for users has in terms of tools like Dropbox and OneDrive and all the stuff that's both good and bad. So anyway, Moore's law, does it affect you? Probably not. You're probably okay. The CPUs that are out right now are really fast. You're good. Do we want to talk about Windows 10 RTM is 2 weeks from now.
It seems so uneventful.
What's RTM?
Release to manufacturing.
Oh my goodness.
Final.
We talked about this a couple weeks ago when they announced the date. But it seems really close. And I think that the build that's up for insiders now is presumably the build. The one that's going to go out.
Unless something incredible blows up, there are no more updates until July 29th.
Right. The amazing thing about this to me is that, like in the old days, they would RTM about this time every year. It would be like mid-August probably, and then it wouldn't be available for people to buy until pretty late in the fall, like into the holiday buying season. So there'd be 2 months from middle of August to October 25th, I think is when Windows XP came out. That like the final bits are there, they're ready, they're available. You couldn't get drivers from anybody to run your video card or sound card or any of that stuff. And like your laptop manufacturer wouldn't support it if you wanted to upgrade. And then all of a sudden they flipped the switch on the day of. Now they RTM'd Monday-ish. 2 weeks later, it's going to be available for everybody to download for free on their computer. It's a big deal. It's a big shift.
You're running Windows 10, Patrick. How are you feeling about the past slew of, the flurry of updates?
Your last comment's a little concerning.
Okay, well, there's... I've been running Windows 10 pretty much since the technical preview came out on my primary production machine.
You're a brave man.
I brave, stupid, thin line. Part of the reason that I've almost always run the new operating system on at least one of my primary systems is because it's really the only way to get to know it.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just something I started doing literally back with Windows 95, and it's just never stopped.
It's always been. This is the first time I've not done that actually, and it's just because my home gaming machine, which is usually the one that I test with, also is my podcast editing machine, and I can't afford for it to be broken right now.
Well, and there's, it's funny because we were talking about virtual machines before, and you could run it in a VM, you could dual boot it. There's a bunch of stuff you can do that is much more practical now than it was even 2 or 3 years ago. But part of what happened is the more I used Windows 10, the more I realized how much I hated Windows 8. And there's nothing particularly wrong. Underneath the hood, Windows 8's a fantastic piece of engineering, but the Metro interface and the fact that, with all due respect, Windows is still not Linux, and you still need to reboot it on a regular basis. And the fact that I had to do all of this foo-rah, or download something that would patch and put a frickin' start button and a power switch in a reasonable location, it just became more and more irritating the more and more time I spent with Windows 10. They're for the most part, the Windows 10. The Windows 10 technical preview has been fairly flawless. There was a week when they did a patch where my system would start rebooting every 10 minutes because I would have to reboot because it would freeze.
They sent one. There was one. It was like in mid-May, right?
Yeah.
Where they sent a bad. Basically, are you on the fast channel or the slow channel?
I was on the slow channel, then I moved myself to the fast channel after that event.
Yeah.
This is a measure of how many updates you get?
Basically, how quickly essentially.
I think it's tiers, right?
Yeah.
Like fast people get it up first, then it rolls out to everybody in the slow channel, and then it rolls out to
Got
the.
it.
Yeah, it's opt-in.
But they fixed most of this. Pretty much, they fixed everything that everybody was whining about in Windows 8 in terms of the Metro interface, the big giant tiles. But it's also funny because they're also still making the tiles a huge part, of the menuing system.
But yeah, you can configure how much of that stuff you see. It's much more configured. Like from what I've seen, it seems like it's much more about giving you the experience you want rather than saying,
Yes.
"Hey, here's the experience you need."
So you're on what is presumably the final now.
Pretty much.
Right.
I mean, the 3D build software is in there that I'm just starting to get to play around with, and a lot of
Native
the stuff.
3D build stuff?
The 3D, the 3D build application that's inside. Essentially, they've decided to add 3D building
Like
technology
for 3D printing?
for 3D printing.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a big thing they were doing at Build this year. Doing the demonstrations for that.
I think for a lot of Windows 8
Fusion.
users,
Yeah.
it'll be a relative no-brainer.
Yeah.
Assuming you're okay with
Yeah.
the updates and stuff.
Yeah,
Like
I mean-
Windows 7 is like the big thing. They want to get Windows 7 users who
Off
have
Windows
resisted
7.
8 on this. And start menu goes a long way.
Yes.
Um,
It'll perform better on older hardware, I believe.
right. I'm curious for Windows people who are using Windows 7 right now, what are the things that they can't live without that they think they're gonna lose with Windows 10?
The menus. I mean, as somebody who like the sub $400 gaming PC, which ironically is my primary desktop system at the warehouse. I don't really think of anything in Windows 7 that I'm going to miss. It's mostly the stuff that Windows 8 crufted on top of the operating system that irritated me in terms of the interface.
I think also the presentation of the interface, because it is made for something. Windows 8 also made for touch, even on desktop. The spacing, I think, is a big thing. Like
Yeah.
spacing of the lists, because it has to be big enough that you can touch those icons.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people like high density displays, and Windows 7 not optimized for touch. Get those your Finder, your Windows Explorer, your Start menu. Those list menus are. It's just an aesthetic.
Whenever I open up a PDF in Windows 8.1, it uses a Metro-style PDF reader.
Yeah.
And it does
that was-
flip.
I don't know how normal people use Windows 8 because the only way I know how to exit that is with Alt F4.
The second thing I did when I started running Windows 8, the first thing I did was install Chrome. The second thing I did was install a third-party PDF viewer, because the fact that they would assume that you're going to, I was just like, I did. If I wanted to run DOS,
It's
Yeah.
the full screen. I don't want if I'm running on desktop, I don't want things to take up the full screen.
I
want
remember
Windows.
I mean, it's funny because for as much trash as you can talk Microsoft, they're not usually profoundly stupid about UI. But the idea that everybody uses a PDF and they read the whole PDF because they're probably doing instructions for something, and why would anybody want to have multiple things up on a PDF viewer?
right.
Like, because wait, are you telling me people read documents and create documents at the same time? That is incredible. I did not know that. We couldn't do that. Well, we could do it in DOS. And I was just sitting there like, what were they thinking? But you said you had that feeling when the first time you're like, bam!
Oh, my wife got so
Full
pissed.
face PDF on the screen, can't get around it, can't minimize it, can't.
If I'm my mom, I'm rebooting the computer at
My,
that
my,
point.
my wife was so pissed that she was just like, I can't use your computer anymore, because she got into the photo viewer and couldn't figure out how to get out.
Exactly.
And you hit the Windows key, right?
And you're like Alt tab, and then it still doesn't live like in a window.
Yeah.
It still
Yeah.
lives in its own full
The-
full screen thing.
The thing that made me crazy that they got rid of Windows 8, that is like my third most used thing in Windows 7 and XP, is the most recently used icon list
Right.
that lived in the start menu. the most recently used applications or most frequently used applications. Like that was a day-to-day stop for me. And like the top 1 or 2 were usually in the taskbar. But then the other stuff that I use once a week, I didn't put in the taskbar, and that's where that lived. And it just doesn't exist in Windows 8.
Right.
You can't get to it. So I'm excited. From what I haven't used it as much as you have, Patrick, but from what I've seen so far, I've been really pleased. And it'll be nice. Like I did the opposite of you. I toughed through Windows 8 because I wanted the performance benefits of the new kernel and all that stuff. And
I did it on this machine until I put Windows 10 on it. But part of the problem was, I do like, especially if you have a minimal amounts of memory, Windows 8's a big step over Windows 7. But it was mind-boggling to me. I didn't realize how much because I was kind of a Windows 8 apologist, and then I started running Windows 10, and I ground my teeth anytime I had to use one of my Windows 8 machines.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, that's a great review right there.
How's Adobe stuff? Do you use Adobe stuff or no?
I am just starting to run. I'm just starting to learn Premiere.
Okay.
The last time I used Premiere was before they wiped. Did you know Premiere is the only application in the history of Adobe where they have wiped the entire code base and started fresh?
I can see that. That was a good choice.
When did they do that?
Several years ago.
When the CS transition, right?
Yeah. Because they realized there were just so many things they just could not cruft around. And it's funny because you mentioned Adobe, and all I can think about Adobe this week is that I've actually been I've been uninstalling Adobe off of everything, and the fact that Firefox now blocks Flash. Natively blocks Flash, and sorry, I'm a little, and I apologize to Adobe because I've just been kind of like die Flash die for the last couple of weeks after the whole hacking team thing.
Years it should have been.
Well, it got particularly bad. Like I've been doing ThreatWire, which is like a lot of internet and PC security stuff. A new show with Darren and Shannon from Hack5, and it's been insane to watch like 3 major patches, at least one of which could lead to taking over your machine in Flash in a week. Which also leads to the whole issue of full disclosure and people selling vulnerabilities to government and hacking crews and all sorts of other stuff, which has gotten just weirder and weirder.
So we should back up and start at the beginning for this because we didn't talk about it too much.
Okay.
Basically, the story is that a company that sells vulnerabilities to corporations, nation states, dictators, the whole thing, it seems like, got caught selling zero-day exploits for Flash, right?
Well, okay, so there's a company called Hacking Team. They're an Italian company, and their primary thing was basically selling software that gave a way for countries primarily to spy on communications on computers, right? Some pretty nasty stuff. Obviously, it's the kind of stuff that is particularly effective in countries that don't have any sort of legal challenges or requirements for
like America.
Yeah. NSA complicated emotions bubbling up.
Sorry,
now,
Patrick.
No, it's so they were always kind of like, well, we don't actively deal with companies with bad human rights records. And what happened is a bunch of
Countries.
countries.
Yeah.
Did I say companies again?
again.
I'm in that
It's okay.
William Gibson Zaibatsu
Right.
area where it's all getting muddy.
It's a horrible dystopian future.
And we're all charging into it. But so a bunch of people basically got irritated with them and hacked into their system, which apparently wasn't that hard because one of the things they did was they hacked in, they took advantage of some really bad passwords, they got inside of their system, they pulled like a 420 gigabyte bolus of data, puked it out on BitTorrent or wherever they decided to put that, and people started analyzing it. And there's like Excel spreadsheets, basically like this is our payment system, and these are the companies that are paying us, and this is how we're getting more business. And they're like, they're dealing with the Sudan, they're dealing with all sorts of countries that are just absolutely horrendous.
The one I saw that was terrible was an Excel spreadsheet that had the list of countries that they talk about working with and the list of countries they don't talk about working with.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, nice job, guys.
Yeah, it was pretty.
Dirtbags.
Yeah, even for people who aren't particularly interested in the concept of human rights, you would have to look at that list and be like, oh,
So the upshot is that out of the hack came a list of some of the previously
Yes.
unknown exploits
that they had
a lot
purchased.
of them in Flash.
Yes, and at least first there was a major Windows one and a major Flash one they found in the first couple days. Then another Flash one, and then a third Flash one was basically found inside of so there were 3 major Flash patches.
So then this led. Does this affect Chrome, which has its own Flash implementation, or do we know?
Yes, it essentially does. Chrome, I think the Google maintains its Flash implementation for Chrome, and I've never really been able to figure out sort of the nature of that relationship, if it's all done in-house or if they have Adobe engineers. But it was, I basically went and just started turning off, like Flash blockers are already on, so I wasn't that paranoid about it, but I'm in the process of, Flash is pretty much gone from everywhere else in my system.
It's a little hard to get rid of. Like it doesn't show up in add remove programs on a lot of Windows machines I've found. Okay, so then after that,
Right.
Mozilla turned off automatic playing of Flash on
Yes.
Firefox, which is a good move. It seems like everybody else is going to do the same thing as time.
Yeah, because
as they're
Flash
able.
had essentially been taken inside of Chrome or Google and Microsoft's progression on Flash was essentially to pull it inside of their browser to try to manage that messy situation.
Right.
Was Flash still somehow more prevalent than I understood? Because from what I saw, Steve Jobs had his crusade.
Yeah, on mobile at
HTML5 versus
Yeah.
Flash, but
Yeah.
that affected the whole web.
But like YouTube was still using Flash as recently as 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Any video you watch on YouTube, unless you opted into the HTML5 player,
I
Yeah.
thought they pushed HTML5.
they just turned over a few weeks ago.
There's
Months
a
ago,
still
maybe.
I mean there's still a tremendous number of video websites that use Flash. If you're looking at like the top 1,000 websites on the internet, probably it's down to single digits or sub single digits of those websites that use Flash. So it's not really big, but it's like the CDN I use, their native uploading tool is Flash in the browser.
So us too. I mean, our player. By the way, we know we're working on the Flash thing for premium videos. People have
Right.
asked a lot about it. We wanted to have an HTML5 solution, but there wasn't a good one at the time, and I think
Right.
somebody's figured out. We just have to test it. So it could be a couple of months, it could be 6 months, it could be 2 years. I don't know, but we're working on it. The upshot is, if you load up, turn off Flash.
Yeah.
Set it if you can't get rid of it because you need it for some stuff. Set it so it doesn't auto run, so that way you have to click on. It gets rid of a lot of ads on the web too, which is
Yeah.
kind of nice. That's the easy way to solve the problem.
If you sit
right?
with like 60 windows open and your machine crawls, if you put a Flash blocker in your browser, you're probably going to notice a dramatic increase in performance.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's also been like the number of stuff coming out of the hacking team. Like just looking at the latest 4 or 5 news headlines, like FBI used hacking team services to unmask Tor user. Another hacking team 0-day services, this time in Internet Explorer, not Flash. South Korea's intelligence agency purchased spyware from hacking team. Malaysia purchased spyware from hacking team. It's been crazy watching this. It's just they basically somebody took their entire closet of secrets and turned it inside out for the internet.
They're going to end up spinning off, making a new company or something like that.
Yeah.
There's no way you recover from this if you're those kind of guys.
Yeah.
Let's take a brief moment and have a word from our sponsors. Norman Chan,
Hey, well,
do you do video conferencing?
I do, and video conferencing is tough because if you use like Skype or even like Hangouts, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, either you have trouble joining the meeting, the video's choppy, crappy, bad quality, the interface is bad, you can't share the stuff that you want to share, the audio sounds bad. I have good news for you.
Yep.
Zoom has left those issues behind.
Yeah, and we tried this out. Zoom, it's ZOOM.us, and the service is really neat. You get all the basic video conferencing stuff you would expect, but also a lot of annotation features. You can manage a ton of people.
Really stellar quality video, both for captured stuff and the heads on the screen. And like you said, you can have conferences with one to many. You can have a massive shared conference with all of your friends. You can use it to plan your raid and WoW, whatever you want to do. It's there. You can try it out at zoom.us/tested. You can start hosting better video meetings immediately. There are no strings attached, no trials. It's really a free account, so just sign up, try it now, and let Zoom know that you support This Is Only a Test. Thanks, Zoom. And now, back to the show. Norman Chan, it's time for the VR Minute. Turns out This Week in VR was taken.
Really?
No, not really.
No,
But we assume he's going to do it at some point. So
This Week In is
This
someone
Weekend
else's
seems
thing.
like it's somebody else's.
Well, two
somebody else's
other
bag.
people see-
Yeah, if it's not Leo, it's
Yeah.
Calicanis.
Yeah.
Yeah, or Kiki, Dr. Kiki,
Was that
who
another
does
one?
This Week in Science,
Oh, yeah.
which I think originally was one of. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
I like the VR minute.
The VR minute's
VR
good,
minute?
right? It's usually way more than a minute.
VR hour.
This week will likely be closer to a minute. Oculus just announced, I think it's because of some leak or something, but they bought a company called Pebbles.
Oh, the people who
Not-
make the watch.
Yeah,
Pebble.
that's what I thought.
But Pebbles, it's a vision company
Unfortunate.
that specializes in hand tracking.
From Israel.
Israel, yes. And undisclosed sum, this is obviously not for next year's consumer release, but it's good to know that they have a bunch of interface people, teams that they've acquired that are solving the problem of how to get your hands into VR.
Yeah. The demo videos look like they're
Yeah.
top notch. They're doing great stuff with occlusion. They're putting hands on top of hands, weaving their fingers together, and everything looks very solid.
And a lot of that is going to be the camera system and also just their algorithms for prediction.
So, it's a Facebook makeout rooms, VR. It's all coming together.
It's coming.
No haptic feedback yet, though.
That's the thing. I mean, as cool as the getting hands into the space is, I still think the big wow factor is going to come from feedback.
I'm going to go ahead and tell you, just getting your hands into this space is a massive leap ahead.
Well, when we're talking about tracking hands, everyone thinks, oh, gloves, right? And gloves are tough with the existing optical tracking systems. When you're talking
Right.
either Lighthouse or Constellation, because gloves, there's a lot of occlusion. So however you're tracking it, whether it's with optical sensors or LEDs, you block them. Also, because they're a malleable form, there's no structure to them. So you have to basically track individual fingertips or something,
Yeah.
and then kind of approximate the skeletal structure of the hand. But putting a haptic system in gloves, I think much easier.
That's what I was
So
thinking.
if you could track the gloves with algorithms as opposed to marked trackers, and get a good low latency, accurate tracking, positional tracking with that, and then just get the feedback with gloves,
Right.
then you're halfway there.
I'm curious what you meant. Like you said that it's great having just hands. When have you experienced that? Are you talking about with the controllers from Oculus or Vive?
The Vive, the Oculus, and then just the hand controllers. I can't remember the name of the company I saw at E3. We didn't have a chance
Control
to shoot a
VR.
video with them, unfortunately.
Oh no, you're
no,
talking
the
about
other
something
one.
else.
Yeah, it's like even with a low fidelity hand model that's just basing like doing inverse kinematics on the bend on your fingers.
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing. So, I think that whoever figures that out first is going to have a big advantage. And if Oculus is buying these guys, clearly it's because they know what they're doing.
Also, Oculus now has a partnership, official partnership with Felix and Paul Studios to, quote, produce a slate of virtual reality experiences. Felix and Paul, they're the company that made those interactive, like the music videos and the that like when you try the Oculus the piano session, they've done a bunch of the demo VR sessions.
Are these
360 sessions.
video or are these rendered or
I
a
think they're
combination of the
video.
two? Okay.
So they're a filming production company, but now they're gonna write, direct, and produce videos. For
I
Oculus.
don't. It's funny, like, because their blurb on their website, which of course I've just lost. Felix and Paul Studio is focused on the creation of cinematic virtual reality experiences, which is just awesome.
I don't know what that means, Patrick.
That stuff is so not interesting to me. The passive experience, even and a lot of it's technical problems right now. If you watch the Felix and Paul stuff, like the spatial audio, it's a great demo for spatial audio when you have like the Cirque du Soleil thing,
Right.
and then you can look around. But even like the stuff they've shot with YouTube, with the 360 camera, with the GoPro stuff, yes, you can track something from a 360 perspective and kind of turn your head, with no positional tracking whenever you're shooting a video,
Yeah.
and no interaction, and that's that. Kind
I
of
can
passive
deal with the lack of
experience.
interaction. I think there's going to be an interesting crossover. Like, I think people are going to be able to watch live stage performances in the comfort of their office chair, for the first time. That's That experience, that's the promise of that experience.
Is that going to be better than? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Is that going to be better than watching 3D movies?
Yes.
Okay.
Infinitely.
Yeah, because the panels are lined up off on the plane of your eye, so it's not one panel on any of the current goggles.
Right.
You lose that warping effect that causes so much problem for the
Movie screens are meant to be 2D. And that's always been the case. Like it's a window. If you watch a 3D movie, you're watching a 3D movie within this rectangle, and it makes it's artificial.
No, I'm just saying. I'm asking because I was watching Robert Heron was testing flat panels. You know, you're basically like $4,000 amazing state of the art screen, and he had Hugo on, which is a fantastic movie, and it's the first time I saw Hugo in 3D, and I watched about 40 seconds of it, and I was just like, I hate this. I hate it even more than I hated it the first. Like a moray eel coming out of a screen is the one thing I've actually really liked in 3D. So I was curious if you were a fan of 3D and how that would impact your thoughts on.
I've always been
Verge.
curious about 3D, and I've been a fan of 3D movies, but it always bothered me.
The Felix and Paul. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just saying I finally saw Inside Out, and I was
Oh,
glad
my
that
God.
like the theater I saw it in, they didn't even offer it in 3D. I
Right.
think word's getting around.
Well, for kids movies especially, for a movie like that, you can't take somebody under 6 to the 3D stuff.
I wonder, did I see it in 3D or not 3D? I think I saw it in 3D, and it was pretty great.
No spoilers.
No spoilers. I cried 3 times.
Thrice?
3 times.
That's once more than I cried growing up.
The one time, there's one cry that was at least 5 times a harder cry than the other.
Were you sobbing visibly?
Yes, visibly. That was the problem
Wow.
with 3D glasses. My 3D glasses fogged up.
Oh, that's cute.
The
Oh
3D
my
glasses
goodness.
fogged up and had to hold back.
Impediment to filmmaking.
The Felix and Paul stuff is really the interesting thing is that they're going to work out storytelling in VR, and whether that means a 360 experience, including looking up and down, or just a 210 degree. How do you best tell an immersive story
Is it like
when
a-
you have a wider field of view than a flat screen?
Is it like a planetarium show? Is that where we're
I think
going?
it's gonna,
Probably.
I think it's going to be close to.
Yeah.
Are you in the middle of the action, but all you need to do is look forward? Are you behind stage?
Yeah.
Where is the seat going to be, and how is the action and the story going to be
Well,
told around you?
Can you get up and walk around? Right?
Probably not.
I mean, I know not with their technology, but why? But like,
yeah, how do you get movement in? Are you sitting in a chair? Is it and then the chair lifts up and and flies through, and then you get to another? Is there a teleportation effect?
well, we
all
don't
that stuff.
All that the language of VR we don't know.
Is what they're going to
Right.
be working on and figuring out.
Right.
I did also want to use the VR minute to briefly talk to you, Jeremy,
Ooh, hit
and
me.
tell you that I've been reading Ready Player One, listening to it actually. I listened to it on my drive back.
Is
and
this
I'm-
the Will Wheaton? Will Wheaton?
the Will
one?
Wheaton one, and
Okay.
I think he does a fine job reading it. And I'm about halfway through now, so I'm not completely done.
Where have you read Ready Player One, Patrick?
Yes.
Where are you in the story? Minor spoilers.
There was just an explosion. It just
At the
happened.
trailer park?
Yes, let's call it that.
What? You're very early.
You're like a third of the way through.
141 pages in.
I don't know how many pages there are.
300 pages. 350 pages, I think, actually.
Okay.
Anyway, regardless, I'm not enjoying it.
Well, you're not even into the book yet.
I hope it gets better.
Yeah.
But it's not the subject matter
I read the opening.
that I'm
to-
not enjoying.
Yeah.
It's the way he tells a story and
Who? Klein or,
Klein.
or Will Wheaton? Okay.
Klein. The Will Wheaton part I'm totally cool with. I think that there are things that are tough to get over, and I would love to talk to you about it.
Well, when
more
you're done with
afterwards.
it, I'd love to talk to you about
We'll
it.
do. When you're done with it,
I'll
we'll
be
do
done
a
this
special
weekend.
episode of the show. We'll all just sit down and talk about the book for a half
I would
hour.
love that.
I have some.
I'm-
I just have some beef that's tough to get over.
Well, great. I'd love to hear it. I'm a couple chapters into his new book, Armada, which came out on Tuesday.
I've been trying to decide if I'm going to pick that one up yet or Neil Stephenson's next.
Neil Stephenson's
he
book
loves
is
and
amazing.
I think that's.
Okay.
I'm reading Seven Eves at the same time as Ready Player One.
Oh, that's a
and
mistake.
One person is clearly a better writer.
No. Well, it's not
Neil
just that.
Stephenson isn't just clear.
No,
He's
no,
one
no.
of the best writers of his generation.
I know.
Yes.
And I'm like.
And I think Klein would actually agree with that.
Yeah,
And
you're-
the thing is, Ready Player One is like the Goonies. Okay, like
It's
Neil
pulpy.
Stephenson stuff is like
Pulpy,
2001.
so really
I know.
good
Well,
word.
we'll talk about it when I finish the book. There are other things I have issue with. I'm not completely disliking it. I'm going to finish it, and there are some lovely moments so far.
Right
Okay, we got to end
Well,
the
I'm not-
podcast so I can hear what.
I'm not going to talk about it right now.
All right.
I'm holding.
Okay.
End the podcast. I want to talk to Norm about this.
You should
Over
read Seven
lunch.
Eves. It's delightful. Really, really good.
Good.
It's so good. And I'm listening to that in audiobook too. Between reading, and it's a really good
That's
audiobook.
I as somebody who has 8 books on the side of his bed at any given moment,
Yeah.
I can't get serious about 2 fiction books simultaneously.
Don't read Seven Eves with something else. That's a mistake.
No, but it's very challenging because I want
And I
to be able
re-listened to
to.
The Martian in between those.
Dude, no wonder you're having difficulty
Yeah.
with it.
Norm, you might be overstimulating yourself. You should dial it back like 3 or 4 notches.
By the way, that was one of the best shots ever to appear on Tested.
When Andy?
the two spacemen walking away from Andy Weir.
when
Oh, so
Yeah.
it's not made clear in the video, but I'll give you the context and going a little back to Comic-Con. Earlier that morning, before the Chris Hadfield Adam Incognito walk, I was walking over to Adam's hotel room to get ready for it. It was I think we had like a 9 a.m. call time or something.
Yeah.
But on the way to his hotel, I was walking past and I glanced over and I saw Andy Weir. And I didn't recognize him, but I knew we'd been talking to him. He was wearing a baseball cap and he had one of those giant Comic-Con giveaway bags.
he had a con backpack.
You know, when you go to Comic-Con, when you sign in, you get a free like goodie bag. But the goodie bag is one of those massive canvas bags
Yeah.
that you can also wear as a backpack. And he was wearing it like a backpack.
How'd you recognize him?
I don't know.
just knew.
He was like looked super nerdy. He was holding his straps like this, and I was looking. I did a double take, and I
Yeah.
think I turned around and called him. I said, "Andy,"
Huh.
and it was, "Oh my God, it's Andy Weir." And so it was pure providence. And I said, "Oh, would you like to come check out Adam and Chris Hadfield's Incognito walk this morning? We're doing." And he said, "Oh no, I got to run to a panel, but he's never met Chris Hadfield before, so he'd love to do that." So I got his phone number, and then texted him, and his panel ended right as we were doing the Incognito walk. And here's the sequence of events. We're on the convention floor, and the way it's filmed is that we have a videographer.
Don't give away too many secrets.
Videographer who films them, and I'm running around trying to get photos sneakily and not completely with them.
And everybody else hangs way back.
And everyone hangs way back. And I get a text message from Andy. "Oh, where are you guys? Should I go meet you at the hotel?" I'm like, "Oh, damn it. We're on the floor right now." So I quickly text him, "Can you get back to this hotel in about 20 minutes and we can meet you there?" And then, actually, I missed a call from him. And then I texted him right away, saw Adam and Chris. They were walking down an aisle, and I snapped like a sequence of 6 photos and then ran away. And then I get a text, a radio message from Adam's manager saying, "Oh, we found Andy Weir. We're about to come out this door." And then they walked out, and he was with them. So he ran into them on the floor just by happens, just by
Oh,
chance.
wow.
Yeah, it was amazing.
was not planned at all.
Adam must have
Perfect.
recognized him.
Adam might not be able to see out of the
Someone
No,
else.
I don't think. I think he approached
Andy
them.
Oh, okay.
recognized Adam's manager probably.
Okay.
But in
That's
that
cool.
sequence of 6 photos that I just mentioned, I reviewed them, and Andy's in the shot, and you can see he's just at a booth looking around. He's looking past them. He turns
Yeah.
to the helmet and
He's
turns
got-
to see them.
He's got this like star-eyed smile.
And there's one shot with a starred smile, and that's the moment I think he realizes it's them.
That's awesome.
Because I told him earlier in the morning
Yeah.
what
Well,
the costumes were.
And Andy had seen the costumes when he was here for the talking room.
Right,
He tried
right.
on the helmet. He was there the day or two after Adam realized that if you put the helmet on, you start breathing. It sounds just like the breathing does in the movie. So clearly, like that wasn't a Foley. Kubrick just jammed a microphone up in the helmet while somebody was breathing.
So totally random
Yeah,
Comic-Con
super
encounter.
amazing Comic-Con luck.
We stacked the deck by reaching out early,
Good photo, Norm.
but it was a nice moment.
Is that the end of the VR minute?
That is the end of the VR
We've got a
minute.
bunch of other stuff to get through, and we're almost out of time.
Really?
We've got Comcast rolled out 2 gigabit per second internet service. I think it's fiber. Is that right? Or we know? It's unclear. I wasn't able to tell if it was fiber by looking at their page. It's $1,000 setup and $300 a month, which is crazy expensive for home users. Pretty cheap for super cheap actually for business users compared to what our 2 gigabit connection was at our 50 megabit connection was at the old office. It about the same price range.
Yeah. You get a 6-unit condo or something. That's great.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, part of it's funny because I think it was there it is, Wired, where Comcast Google fiber rival will be laughably expensive, and I get what they're coming from a consumer perspective, but like the Hack 5 warehouse, they basically bought to get decent coverage out in the particular industrial area where they are. They ended up buying 5 lines because that's
Yeah.
the minimum for Comcast to extend the cable to the building they were in, and they're still getting like 500 megabits combined on an external router. So this is actually looking comparably cheap.
Right. I mean, even
know.
compared to the high-speed wireless stuff that we can get in this part of San Francisco, which has usage caps, this is still in the same price range. I mean, the setup's a little bit more, but if you have a 3-year lease on someplace, you amortize the $1,000 over 3 years plus however long you stay after the lease is up, and it works itself out.
Yeah, and I mean it's amazing. Like Google Fiber, there's a bunch of stories. There's a bunch of stories this week where Google Fiber is joining the White House's low-income broadband efforts, and but people still realize that Google Fiber is in such a tiny percentage of the markets in the United States. 4,
maybe 5 now.
Yeah, maybe 5 now, and it's Comcast for a business looking for super fast speed or somebody with just money to burn. Comcast fiber isn't going to look that bad, and Comcast is probably more likely to run it to more houses faster than Google. I mean, I'd love for nothing more than for Google to basically start pulling their billions, out of Ireland, which technically are in banks in New York, and just wire the entire continental United States.
So the thing that I think all that has to happen is for Google to threaten to bring fiber, because it seems like a lot of municipalities are having luck by threatening to roll out a municipal broadband program.
Well,
and then Comcast,
there's a
Time Warner, whatever.
There's a problem there because when municipal broadband started to become a big thing, like almost 15 years ago, back when I was still in the screensavers, Verizon sat down and wrote up and jammed through, I think it ended up going through 17 state legislatures that basically made it extraordinarily difficult for municipalities to create their own broadband systems. And this started when ironically enough, Comcast hometown Philadelphia, who had fundamentally been ignored by broadband services, decided to start wiring a significant percentage of the city themselves. And the response from that was absolutely berserk.
Oh, yeah.
And it ended up, putting in a lot of really just abominable legislation.
I think a lot of that stuff got rolled back though last year, didn't it? Wasn't there there was a case about that? I don't remember whether it went to the Supreme Court or not. But anyway,
I think you're totally right. I've said that before. That I think Google doesn't even care if Comcast rolls out 2 gigabit internet. They want people on the net.
They just want it
as
connected
fast as
and
possible.
Yeah,
and they've done this in order to make a good threat.
Have any of you, like my parents have fiber, have a municipal fiber, the electric company rolled fiber for years and then finally just turned it on about 5 years ago. And when I go to their house, they're paying for the cheapest thing, which is I think 50 megabits. But the difference is the latency is unbelievable on it. Like you type your query, you hit the button and there's not that 0.2 of a second wait.
That's cool.
It's just right there immediately. It's amazing.
That's the promise of the dumb terminal.
The premise of the dumb terminal.
I wish I was a dumb
The promise
terminal.
and the promise.
That's my new band. The promise of the dumb terminal.
February last year, FCC overruled 2 state laws that were blocking municipal broadband, but the similar law, quote, Gizmodo.com, similar laws blocking cities from building out their own broadband networks exist in 19 other states. That said, the FCC just set an important precedent.
Well, and the Title II stuff opens that stuff up even further, as I understand it.
Yeah, well, as soon as it
assuming that actually holds.
Gets implemented, yeah.
Did you guys see the deep image, the artificial neural network?
No.
The way that. So, do you guys know the way? So the way neural networks work is that you set up this structure and then you feed it data and you tell it what that data is and you have to train it just like you teach a dog to do something or a kid to do something. So the way you teach a neural network to recognize images is if you want a neural network to recognize images of dogs, you feed it millions of pictures of dogs. Just keep pumping them in as fast as you can. Then the thing Google realized, and this is, I think, the new part, is that it's funny because this is something I did research on like 20 years ago when I was in college, is that you tell it to draw a picture of a dog. You tell the neural network that thinks it knows what a dog looks like and is good at recognizing dogs on the internet to draw a picture of the dog. Mm-hmm. This is where the nightmare fuel happens.
I learned Kung Fu. Show me.
Yes.
So,
like the one that is the easiest to describe is probably they said draw a picture of a banana. And on that picture, you see like 6 individual bananas kind of arrayed out with all these weird like Mandelbrot set fractal type things happening inside and around the edges of bananas. And then you see other things that are commonly in pictures that would have a banana in it.
Oh, funny.
So, for example, I guess if I'm taking a picture of a banana, frequently there will be a bowl of cereal next to it. So there's a bunch of bowls, and they're all like the epitome of the bowl. It doesn't look like a banana. Like your brain can pick out a banana in that mess, but it definitely does not look anything like a bunch of bananas. Same thing for the dogs and the cats and the mountain when they wanted to pick mountains, then they get a lot of pagodas and like cabins in those pictures. It's really fascinating. There's just go if you search for artificial neural network in Google image, the stories will pop right up, and I'll jam it on the website later this afternoon if I have a chance. But they're really, really gorgeous, and like I said, also terrifying. They look like something from some like they look like the result of an experiment that takes somebody with some deep-seated mental issues and tells them to draw something.
Well, have you ever seen there was a series of paintings done by an artist? They're basically cat paintings, and by an artist that was going through schizophrenia.
Okay.
And it goes from like, this is a cat to it looked like gigantic exploding space crystal cat.
Yeah.
And this reminds me a lot of that progression.
It's very similar. I thought it was fascinating. It's definitely worth taking a look. Apple announced 3 new products yesterday. A new iPod Touch, a new iPod Nano, and a new iPod Shuffle. The Nano and Shuffle are the same form factor. The Nano, which previously had, I guess, iOS 6 style icons, still has iOS 6 style icons. That stuff hasn't changed. The Touch is the same size as the iPhone 5, so the same size as the old one, but it's been updated with an A8 processor, and they ditched the strap. Seems to be the big things that have changed. And there's a 128 gig SKU now,
And
which
gold.
I think there always was before.
No, I think that's new.
Oh, it's new. Okay.
And there's a gold version.
Different colors, yeah. So yeah, if you want an iPhone for your kid without having to give him a phone, there you go.
I just wish it had GPS.
I don't I wish iPads had GPS too, but they don't put it in.
Well, they do if you buy the ones that are
Cell modem, yeah.
which is just irritating.
I'm surprised that nobody's put GPS on maybe an antenna issue too. Maybe having additional antennas, maybe the GPS is piggybacking on the phone antenna. Anyway,
That's a good question.
iOS 9 public beta is out. That came out last week. I've heard a lot of good things about the beta 3 version of that people are actually running. As always, don't put on your production stuff. If you want to roll back, it's hard, yada, yada.
I joined that.
And you'll lose stuff like Apple Music. Like it is not fully featured. It does not have some of the stuff that came in iOS 8.4. So if you're hooked on your Apple Music or your Beats One,
Well, it's on there.
oh, it's on there now.
Yeah, they like the first beta that didn't have that. That was an internal. That was a developers only. But the
Okay.
public one was the more recent
It's
one.
more feature complete.
And it has Apple Music on it. Yeah.
Have you put it on an iPad yet?
I put the developer one on the iPad, but I put the open one on the phone because I wanted to see what that process was like.
So I'm going to put between now and next week, I'll put the developer, the open one on my iPad Air 2, so we can try. I want to try multitasking stuff. Ours had a good video of that, and it looks fabulous.
Oh yeah, if you got the new iPad, it's great.
Yeah. Neil Young pulled all of his music from all the streaming services that are not Neil Young's music streaming service.
Boy.
I don't think I want to talk about this anymore.
Patrick?
Wait, which one is Neil Young's?
Oh.
Mlif.
He has the one with the player, right?
The little triangle Pano player,
Pano.
Pano
Pano,
music.
yeah.
Yeah, he's
Huh.
never good enough.
it's a temper tantrum because his music service isn't taking off. I mean, I have been a Neil Young fan for a long time. I'll continue to be a fan of Neil Young's
Harvest
music.
is an amazing album.
Yeah, and he's done some, he's done some incredible music, but at this point, his the fact that he owned up to we showed a lot of the artists who talked about how amazing Pano music was. We demonstrated 128K files versus
Lossless.
the master quality tracks. I mean, it's a temper tantrum. You know what? Doesn't matter because whatever CDs of his I own, I'll just rip into a FLAC file. And I don't particularly,
16-bit is good enough.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation that I don't even want to begin to get into right now because I'm still trying to and who knows, maybe I don't have the hearing left for it to get back to a conversation we almost started before the show. There's just not a huge, I'm listening with some really good equipment and I'm really not finding a huge difference between FLAC files made from CDs and, the HD tracks or high definition audio.
Well, neither did most people. That's why those
Yeah.
formats didn't take off.
We should do these tests with your kids. They have good
Ooh,
ears
that's
still,
a good idea.
which sounds better.
But in my experience, kids care nothing
Oh
about
yeah, no, they
progression.
actually don't.
Yeah.
They'll watch 640 by 40 stuff, no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Bob Marley still sounds amazing
Fun
on a
with
jank
hipster
AM
kids.
radio. Well, but that's just it, though, because this is the part of the reason I mentioned it is I'm working on an article for Tested that talks about listening and what listening means and the idea of golden ears and how that listening is a process and listening for quality is something that you may not actually do naturally unless you are a musician and you spend a lot of time. And you, when you listen to, the first time I heard a 128K, like 128K MP3, I was torn between like, this is what I've waited for literally my entire adult life, was to have all of my music and to be able to skip around and have CD quality but it wasn't CD quality. And is that supposed to be a cymbal? Is that a ride cymbal? Or is that someone frying things in the kitchen?
Yeah,
right. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And then the quality got better and better, and that became less of an issue. But it's way too much information for what should have been a 10-second aside. Sorry.
Oh no, you're good. I think that'll do it for news this week. Let's play some music and talk about what we've been testing. I got one of the new UE Ultimate Ear speakers.
An actual speaker.
Wait, I didn't bring it here today.
Not
so I can't.
not earbuds.
It's a speaker. So they make the boom, the big cylindrical thing. They made a mini boom, and they made a mega boom that's enormous and kind of ridiculous. But the mini boom was the thing. We loved the mini boom. It was $99. It came out 2 years ago now, maybe.
Yeah.
And it's a little Bluetooth speaker with a speakerphone built in. You can pair two of them together if you want to have stereo, put them in different parts of the room. And it sounded amazing for what ended up being like an $80 street price, right? So way, way better than what we were seeing at that sub $100 price point before. They just announced the Roll last week, actually, while we were at Comic-Con. And it's a replacement for the boom. The thing that they did with the later version, so the mini boom was not waterproof. The boom and the mega boom both are. So you can take them in the shower. They're, I think, IPX7 waterproof, which is the same as the Apple Watch. So a meter for 30 minutes or something, a meter for an hour. So you can take them in the shower. You can take them camping. You can take them out in the field. If they get rained on, it's no big deal. The mini booms were not waterproof, which was a big disappointment for people who wanted waterproof Bluetooth speakers, I guess.
Wait, which was the $80 one then?
The mini boom.
Okay.
Yeah. So they
the one that looks like
it looks like, yeah, it looks like you know what it looks like? It looks like the old timey like speakerphone that you talk to your personal assistant if you're in the 60s, or your secretary if you're in the 60s.
Oh yes.
On your desk. They replaced the mini boom with the Roll, which is waterproof, has all the stuff that the newer ones have. You're going to be able to connect like 8 of those together. So if you and all your friends have them, you can pair them all up and make something ridiculous with them.
Well, I like they show the tubing picture on the front page. Does it actually come with the little floaty?
The last time I talked to them, they didn't know if it was going to have the floaty or not.
It's got to come with the floaty.
The floaty might be an additional accessory.
It looks like a pill. I mean, a giant graphically. It's. I'm curious. I'm really curious what the sound's going to be like on it.
It sounds really good. I mean, the thing that amazes me consistently about them is that they're able to get incredible sound out of these tiny little packages. It actually looks like it's like two conical. It's like two inverse cones, right? So one is two convex surfaces that are glued together, and there's a speaker in between. The reason they did that is so that you get 360-degree sound field out of it. Because the thing they realize is that most people take these and like put them on a picnic table, put them in their backyard, put them by the pool, stuff like that.
That's cool.
And this lets you get better. It's not quite as directional. It's why the other ones are cylindrical.
Are you going to do a review of it or anything?
We'll do a show and tell.
I want to hear it.
It's really good. I'll bring it in next week. Anybody else? What else? Is people? Jeremy, you have something novel?
This was a Kickstarter, but I found it after it left Kickstarter, and they were taking pre-orders. This is called the L3D cube. It's an 8x8x8 RGB LED cube.
Now, Will and I built a 4x4x4 Hypno Cube, and we soldered a lot of LEDs for that.
Yeah, you did a week of build for that, right?
Yeah, this only took you like an hour to put together.
1 hour for
a million
500,
LEDs?
512 LEDs.
That's right.
That's really good.
And that's because these are
RGB. They're SMD, so they're
SMD.
surface mount LEDs, and they come on these tiny little thin circuit boards that have these headers on the bottom that you just drop into this.
This is very similar to like
on the bottom.
What installations use. Like on the BattleBots set, they had these in giant arrays to make the lights that go around the bottom of the stands.
And then at the top, there's these beams that hold everything so that everything lines up exactly vertically.
And is there an electrical connection on the top, or is it just mechanical?
No, there's no electrical at the top. It's actually powered by the photon, this new particle photon, which is the successor to the Spark Core. So it has Wi-Fi capability, but they haven't actually opened up that capability yet because it's such a new microcontroller. And it does their backend doesn't support it yet. But anyway, it's kind of neat. You can change the modes by tilting it.
I was wondering.
I built it with my 8-year-old son, and we had a blast because it was really easy. I mean, as somebody who's made kits before, I have a lot of respect for the choices they made. It's very simple to build, and it's well packed, and it's a really good kit. I'm happy with it.
How much is it?
I don't even remember.
Okay.
But it was reasonable.
Like a few $100?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it was very reasonable.
It's a couple
for what
$100
it is.
bucks.
Yeah.
$350.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
more than the kit that we made. Obviously, you get a lot more LEDs.
And the RGB.
And the RGB. The drawback is because they're surface mount, they're only one side.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Then
Like if I
one
turn
side.
this to the side,
Yeah.
to turn it around, you
There's-
can see if you're watching the
right.
video, you can't see it nearly as well.
It looks best in 2/3.
Yeah.
Or straight on.
Yeah.
when you're
Anywhere,
facing
I think
Like
there's
right there,
one
it's
of
It's
these.
pretty mesmerizing.
It's pretty
Um,
cool. And once there is this cloud-based service where you can design your own things that isn't open yet, but once people start doing that and you can download other people's designs, it's going to be pretty cool.
It looks like something that should be in the background of Logan's Run.
Yeah.
Well, it's the I always think of it as Star Trek computer. Those
Yeah,
things are
right.
they're
And you interviewed these guys, and you were saying
Yeah.
that their whole MO is to experiment with volumetric displays.
Volumetric displays.
So it's not just like an LED toy.
right.
They're actually thinking beyond this, and I
Yes.
think that's a
like
neat
they
concept.
didn't have the LED before the Kickstarter. Their company was doing 3D printed, encased in lucite 3D images.
Wow.
Like printing things so you can look around from all sides. So it's all about volumetric imaging and what kind of displays you can get with 512 dots. Basically,
It's amazing because when you stand back from this, it does look more like a screen than like the HypnoCube that we built.
I'll tell
Stuff
you
like that.
what makes a big difference when you're using this or the HypnoCube is putting it on or around reflective surfaces. Like even the acrylic, the light bouncing off of it enhances it.
Well,
Or
it's-
putting a mirror behind it.
If you go to the lookingglassfactory.com is the website, they're offering a 16 by 16 by 16.
Yes,
one.
we
That's
saw that.
Wow.
That's
Which
over
is
$1,000.
Yeah, no, it's 2,200. That one's 350. This one's the 16 by 16 by 16 is $2,200.
And you know what? Not as cool. The density, they
Really?
didn't space out the,
They had it
the
at Maker
density that well.
I didn't see it.
This one is really good.
Yeah,
That's gorgeous.
4,100 cubes LEDs.
Yeah, but you could do a 3D sprite on that, like a real Mario,
yeah.
like a walking Mario in 3D. That'd be cool.
That's pretty bananas.
It's like a 3D
it's like that
favicon
movie
on your
Pixels.
desk.
Yeah, right.
that movie Pixels, like a spinning Pac-Man.
Yeah,
Norm,
you know my son is nuts about the Pixels trailer.
Oh, Jesus.
I keep
you
trying.
can still disown him.
I'm
it's
trying.
okay.
I'm trying to correct every time he admires it. I try to correct him and say, "No, this movie's horrible."
I haven't seen
enjoy
the
it.
trailer. I refuse to watch the trailer because it looks so profound. Play for the planet. No.
Make him watch The Waterboy 2 about 6 times and then see if he still wants to see it. Norm, anything for you?
Still using that Pebble. I'm like a month in now. Man, this
Pebble
did not-
Time.
Pebble Time. Sorry, it really did not need to have that color display, and whatever the compromise they made to use this display, I did not like. Like it's tough to use, tough to look at from any other angle than directly on with the light at a right angle. Right here. This is good.
That's optimal.
Not good. Not good.
You're going to have to
not
drive this
good,
during the video.
Not good.
Because there's no way I can manage this.
No, this is good.
Anybody using Apple Music still?
Oh yeah, I like it.
Still on the Apple Music
Yeah,
feed?
yeah. I thought. Yeah, again, I'm really intrigued by the whole idea of programming one station. So I think Beats One, it's been a success. It's pretty cool. And the service has been adequate. I mean, I've been looking forward to it just so I can control an online music library with Siri. And interestingly,
Does it work?
I've been traveling, so I haven't actually done that, which is
Okay.
what I do in the car. So I'll try that after the show. But yeah, I like Apple Music. It works for me.
Okay.
What, you don't use it? You don't like
No,
it?
I like it. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah.
Solid. I guess that'll do it for us this week. Patrick Norton, people can find anything. Sorry for you testing. We're bingo on time.
Unraid 6 and the Logitech Wireless Touch Keyboard K400 Plus.
Which one is that? The one with the weird slot, or is that the PC one?
That's the PC one.
Oh, that's a nice keyboard. Has the
is.
touchpad good?
Yes. I just was amazed that the original K400 had over 7,000 reviews on Amazon.com with an average of 4.3. That was
one,
mind-blowing.
that $25 Microsoft Media keyboard also is the same. Is this Bluetooth or does this have a dongle?
This has one of their proprietary,
dongles. Yeah, that's the one thing I wish that they had changed on both that and the Microsoft version.
Yeah, they're not going to do that.
Nope.
Techthing.com, avxl.com, tested.com.
Very good. Jeremy Williams at Jareware on Twitter.
We're on Twitter.
Any product related news?
No.
Norman Chan.
And Chan.
I'm Will
stuff.
Smith. Today's outro comes to you from, let's say, Sean. I haven't listened to this yet. I forgot to do this before we started the show. So here it is. See you guys next week. Hi there. I didn't see you. Tested. I got excited. It happens to everybody. I don't have any idea where that's from. Yeah, okay. See you guys next week.
Megabots. That's my bet.